Hello, I'm Cameron.
And I'm Cindy.
And welcome to Homeschool Roots. So today we're going to talk about how to homeschool your child that is below grade level. This is something I've been seeing a lot in some of the homeschooling forums that they're pulling their child out because they are below grade level. And I think that homeschooling can be a great way to make sure that your child is not falling through the cracks and is able to get up to where they need to be. So first step is obvious. We need to determine why are they below grade level. And that sounds obvious, but it's actually, it requires some honesty on your part as well, because we need to look at, have you maybe not been paying attention as much as you should? Is there a disability? I mean, there might be some painful truths that you'll have to encounter and deal with when you are doing this step of determining why they're below grade level.
That's exactly right. And, when you need to figure out how long have you had this feeling, how do you know that they're behind grade level? Are you observing them with other children? Is it from a report card or an achievement test score of some kind? How are you making the determination that your child is really behind? Have you noticed it just this year in the current grade level where they are, or have you had this feeling all along? It's really important to start to determine first of all, why is this happening now? Is it because the child is getting older, and as they are taking on new and harder information, they can't keep up? Or is there something going on in the family, like some kind of crisis situation, or loss of a parent, loss of a marriage, loss of a grandparent, a big move across the country or around the world? All of these things can impact your child's interest level and ability to concentrate on their studies.
Exactly. So Cindy kind of already covered it. How long? Obviously, you want to get it as soon as possible, but don't beat yourself up. I mean, sometimes things happen, and the reality is they've been below grade level for a while, but they've been socially promoted, and maybe you just believe the problem would solve itself and it'll just go away, and now it's just obvious the problem is not going away. So don't beat yourself up over it. It's not about looking back. We just need to look forward. So next we're going to talk about how do we determine the reason, because just asking them why are you getting F's, Johnny, that's not going to cut it.
Right, exactly. The first place to start is with your child's current teacher. That may not be a satisfying answer for you, or you may not feel like their estimation of the situation is correct, but it's a good place to start and to get information. Then if you feel that it's warranted, sometimes a child's grades start to slip simply because they can't see and they need an eye test. Have some testing done. Start with the easy things like eye tests, hearing tests, just a general physical, that if your child is dealing with anemia, they may just be so tired they're not concentrating. Always, again, like we've said before, look at their diet, their sleep schedule, their time on screen, that they're taken up online and things like that. But if those things check out, or you just feel like that has all been the same for years, but now there's a clear problem, you should pursue some testing. And there are learning centers throughout the United States that will do testing for all kinds of learning disabilities. And there are places through the school system, through your family doctor, and through other professionals that can kind of guide you to those learning centers that will test and make recommendations based on your child. But you need facts. Not just feelings. And I can't say enough about what Cameron just said. It is not productive for you to just beat yourself up and I should have known this before. I should have done something sooner. The past is the past. And the good news is that now you are paying attention and you are your child's best advocate and their favorite and best teacher, whether you are homeschooling or making sure that they are being taught in the place that's best for them. Exactly. You are your child's number one advocate and teacher and cheerleader.
And I also want to say, and this is kind of maybe a cultural note, especially like in the Black culture, if the child is not doing well, sometimes the gut instinct is to chastise or corporal punishment and things like that. And I'm not trying to tell anyone how they should raise their kids, so please don't interpret it that way. But I would recommend against going towards that direction when they're below grade level, and it's easier said than done. But just trying to figure out the why in a non-chastised way. Like, don't just say you're lazy and just saying like that. I mean, I know that worked back in our day or the day before, but I mean, this is 2000. This is 2020, and the reality is that kids are a lot more sensitive than they used to be, and so we don't want to chastise them, because if you just chastise them and you just call them names, tell them they're lazy, and they shut down, that's not going to be productive to solving the problem. The goal is not to get revenge on your child because you felt like they disobeyed you. The goal is to get them to where they need to be. And so we do that through love and showing them that, that you are on their side. You're there to help them. You're not there just to chastise them.
Yes, that is so important, because more times than not, your child is very aware of their deficits, and they already feel dumb, stupid. They feel like everybody else is smarter than they are. They make judgments among themselves of, oh, that's a smart kid, I'm not a smart kid. And the learning problem becomes the elephant in the room. Everybody knows it, but nobody's willing to address it. And if you can make your child comfortable to talk to you about their own insecurity and how they're feeling about what's happening, I can guarantee you children are carrying a load of responsibility and a lot of judgment on themselves, that it's their fault. They're just, if they were just smarter, or
lazy.
Or that they're lazy. That's right. And so that is not productive. And you want to enable your child as a human being to be able to express how they're feeling and what is happening on the inside of them, and to reassure them. They may be thinking that if they say, I'm just dumb, they might be thinking you'll agree with them. You're right, you're just not smart. You need to be ready to come back to them with words of affirmation and of their great value to this world.
Amen.
And that everyone is smart. We're smart in different ways, and but they are smart, and they're very smart in some ways. Maybe in other ways they have a harder time, but everybody's like that. And if you can address it with positivity and without condemnation, they might be able to see themselves without that condemnation as well.
And I just want to make sure we're making it clear, that does not mean that we need to be complicit
Right.
in their low scores.
Right.
I mean, you don't need to beat them with a reed,
Right.
but that doesn't mean that, oh, it's okay that you're
Yeah.
failing math, and that's not what we mean.
Right.
We mean that we want to get them to where they are, but not through chastising. It's and your child more than anyone, so you know what works.
Yeah.
But I will say, when it comes to discipline and trying to get your child to do what you want them to do, if you're constantly having to chastise and increase the amount of discipline, oh, you're grounded for 2 weeks, you're grounded for 3 weeks, then that means it's probably time to try something different.
Yes. Good advice.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so next we're going to talk about taking a new approach. So this is assuming that we have a diagnosis, or you've determined the reason, whether it is divorce or the move or whatever. So obviously we've determined what we've been doing is not working. That means it's time to make a change. So the next step is going to be really important. What change do we make? So what we need to do is, your biggest resource is to talk to other homeschoolers. And so you can see, like, hey, my child's really having trouble with this. What did you do in that? I mean, that's going to be one of your biggest resources. If they have a diagnosis, maybe Asperger's or just ADHD or just some sort of diagnosis, then the doctor can probably recommend a good curriculum. Or again, other homeschoolers whose child has a similar diagnosis.
Yes, and if your child is struggling it's discouraging to go back to the same materials, the same curriculum, and they have that feeling that, I didn't get this last week, I'm not going to get it this week, I'm not going to get it next week. And sometimes you can just stop that downward spiral by starting something new and different. And you might, change your schedule of what time of the day that course comes up, or rearrange your room, or try different materials and see what you can do to make things more visual, more tactile, more obvious, in different ways with object lessons, or more than just memorization. You can try to find some new engaging materials, whether it's through song or manipulatives or whatever, to make something fresh and new, so that the child gets the idea that they can start again and they can have a different outcome this time.
And I know there's one thing that I know it's not in vogue to say now with modern homeschooling settings, but I will say that, and this is the reason we believe in it, creating a learning environment can make a huge difference in your child's progress. It just does. Why do you think, for example, companies, they bother to set up offices and pay for that? That's an expense. Why doesn't every company that can just have their employees work from home? Because they're not as productive. If you're just doing homeschooling from the kitchen table, your child, they're looking at their favorite snack in the cupboards, and you yourself, maybe let me just put that load in the washing machine or something like that. So we do believe in recreating a classroom. That's appropriate. It doesn't have to be exactly, but just creating a dynamic learning space can work wonders if you are having discipline problems or just problems with your child not getting the material. There's a reason why schools are set up the way they are.
Right. One big problem may be the child's ability to focus, and sometimes the more stimulus that there is around them, whether it's in sight, sound, smells, particularly if you're in the kitchen, things like that can really be distracting and can make it very difficult for a child to focus and to learn. So those types of things can help.
I want to talk about when to switch curriculums, because we are not a fan of just, we're going to try something else. And this is another reason why we actually like having a comprehensive curriculum as opposed to just yanking stuff off the internet, because it has a plan, because that can actually solve a lot of things too, is by having a good comprehensive curriculum. But at what point do you think it would be time to make a change in the curriculum, assuming they have a comprehensive curriculum? It's every day is a battle. At what point do you think it's time to make a change?
Well, I generally, everybody's different, so there's always going to be exceptions to the rule, but generally I think if you make a decision about a curriculum, you should stick with it through that school year, for sure, and see how your child is doing, and that you give it your best effort in that time. Don't, if one unit is not as good as you thought, don't be ready to throw the whole thing out. One thing really does build on another, and it could be that those skills will come up again later in the same year. Sometimes if you're new to homeschooling, you think that when your child has a unit on verbs, let's say, that they have to get all of that information and nail it now. But what you don't realize is they're going to have that same information every year. And yes, you don't want them lost, that they don't get it at all, but you don't have to feel like it's an all or nothing proposition. And the idea of a comprehensive curriculum is that also it has been tried and tested with thousands of kids. And if you stick with it and really work the program like so many other things, it will balance out. But if I went through a full school year and I feel like unit after unit and chapter after chapter, that my child just was not getting it and they were feeling more and more defeated,
and every day is a battle,
I would make a change. I would try to stick with it through the year. Sometimes it's so obvious that it's not going to work, you can't. But sometimes that's because maybe you have chosen the wrong curriculum to begin with. Maybe you chose a curriculum that is too advanced for your child or too easy, and it's just never going to go well. And you can see that from 2 weeks into the school year, or 2 months.
And how
into
closely
the
are
school
you
year.
following the curriculum? And do you believe in the curriculum?
Yeah.
Because kids can see that. If you're
Yes.
just, okay,
Yeah.
then they're just going to mimic you. And
That's right.
and then you want to talk about saving money. I mean, these curriculums aren't cheap.
Right.
And so, and piecemealing, we are strongly against piecemealing, especially for new homeschoolers.
Yes.
Can you want to go a little bit more into why on that?
Well, a curriculum that you get for all the subjects, the comprehensive curriculum, really does, one subject will dovetail into another, so that the units might be talking about the same areas. Or for example, there may be a book or an essay assigned in English that is relating to what they're studying at the same time in history, and it may
Or
use
even math.
vocabulary that you're studying about in English. You may be having spelling words that are coming from those same units, and so the information starts showing up in different academic classes. That is great. When you can integrate your knowledge, that's what you want for your child, to integrate their knowledge and be able to apply what they know from one subject into another discipline. That's real learning. And comprehensive curriculums are written in order to accomplish that. One thing supports another and feeds into the other subject, and that is gold.
You're just not going to get that from yanking stuff off
Right.
the internet. And you don't even know who wrote that on the internet. I've pulled stuff off the internet and it was wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, one of them said that Thomas Jefferson was the second president of the United States.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, so that's why I don't support just yanking stuff off the internet.
You also may find, for something new, that it may be time to bring in a tutor. If your child is struggling with math, and particularly if math wasn't your favorite subject either, and you are just at a loss of how else to explain it, or you have no idea how to make it more creative or bring in other manipulatives, you don't even know how that's possible. It may be that if you can find a math tutor that math is their passion and they love it and they understand it and it's exciting to them, they can communicate that with your child in an exciting way, not just a drudge that, well, we have to learn this, so we're going to sit here until we get it. And if you don't like the subject matter either, it's hard for you to convey enthusiasm for it when in the back of your mind you also believe this is going to be hard and we're just going to have to suffer through. It doesn't have to be that way, and a tutor can make the difference in that area.
Speaking of comprehension, if you notice in our videos, there's a common theme, and that is don't do homeschooling to save money.
Yeah.
Because if your mindset is just to save money, then you're not going to want to invest in a tutor.
Right.
And you're not going to want to invest in some of the materials that they need. Now, we're not always saying more expensive is better. That's not what we're saying. But if you have the mindset, oh, I got to save money, let's be honest, you're human as well. You're going to need a break.
Right.
And a tutor is such a wonderful resource, and they can become part of your family. And you don't necessarily have to pay top dollar either. Just people go where they feel welcome and they're treated well. And if you can create a nice environment for the tutor, even if you can't afford to pay top wages, they'll stay.
Yes. We once had a tutor that taught astronomy, and he wanted to do it. That was his background. He, of course, didn't have a job here that paid him for that. And so he came just to share his love of astronomy. Now, he took the curriculum, he taught from the curriculum, but he taught at a whole nother level than what anyone else would have done who just would have taken the book and done the lectures, because he had such an interest in it and a deep understanding of it.
And what a nice break, too.
It was. And for him as well, you know, he didn't have any children himself, and so it was great for him to interact with a family in a family situation, and to come, you know, a couple or 3 times a week and teach astronomy. And it was a wonderful, you know, a wonderful experience for all of us.
Exactly. How long has Stephanie been with?
Our my homeschool teacher that helps me has been with us now, I think this is her 8th year.
See? And it's not about paying top dollar. It's just about such a loving, welcoming place. Like, she wants to come, you know?
Yeah.
So next is going to be days of emphasis.
Yes. You know, something you can do to help a child maybe catch up, or to spend extra time on a subject matter that's really difficult for them. Instead of just saying every day we're going to sit here and do this, you know, we're going to spend this hour on math Monday through Friday. Maybe you could spend a more concentrated amount of time on a special day. You might have Math Monday, where you're going to do 3 hours of math, but it's not going to be just sitting pounding out, you know, problems and drilling things. But first you do some drills, and then you maybe even change places in the room and do speed drills, or do manipulatives, or write on the board. You know, that it's kind of a like a marathon. You could have a math marathon or a phonics marathon, and where 1 day a week you spend extra time catching up on concepts that maybe the child is behind on. But you don't do that every day. You don't do what they hate every day and what's a struggle. You spend a concentrated amount of time. Maybe there's a reward at the end of the time together.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
My nephew, it was below grade level with his math. What my stepdad would do is him and his sister would do the tutoring, and if he didn't concentrate, if he didn't do it, he would make this special macaroni and cheese that everyone loves. But if he didn't concentrate, or obviously he was just writing numbers, he wasn't getting any. and then they make sure to eat it. But if he did, then he would get some. And so it was that combination of, okay, you do what you're supposed to do, you get rewarded. If you don't, then there's a consequence. Mm-hmm. But it worked. You just stay on it. And so that's another thing we want to talk about. The biggest thing is you have to stay on it. You cannot just count on, oh, okay, do this, and then expect them to be at where they should be, because that's what you probably were doing before, and it didn't work. So I mean, and that's the thing with homeschooling. And if you want to do homeschooling, you need to understand that if you are homeschooling, you are responsible for your child's success. So that means you need to be checking, make sure they're doing their assignments online. You got to make sure you're checking, even with the tutor. You want to check their work, sit in on those classes sometimes. I mean, you got to be on it if you want to be successful at this.
Yes, you know, the days of burying your head in the sand are over. You need to stay on it. You know that ignoring a problem doesn't make it go away. It only makes the problem bigger when you finally choose to deal with it. And so stay current. Also, you help your child miss the overwhelming feeling of being so far behind. If you can prevent that early on, how much better is that for everyone involved? And so run to the roar. You know, when I do too, and it's a great motivation for us. You know, when things are difficult, instead of pushing them away and avoiding them, hit them head on. And just that attitude alone is going to communicate to your child that you don't ignore problems, and you don't pretend they're not there and wish that they weren't there and try to hide them or cover them over. You address them head on because you're able to.
Your child needs to understand that what has the status quo is not acceptable. Yeah. And so the way they've been doing it, where you just say, "Did you finish your homework, honey?" "Yes." "Okay." That's not going to fly anymore.
No.
So your child needs to understand that what has been happening, their normal, is not okay and it's
Right.
not acceptable. At the same time, you have to be there to help them to elevate themselves. You cannot expect, a child is not just a miniature adult.
Right.
You know, they are a developing person, and your job is to basically be that base that raises them up. And that's why you got to make sure you got the number one. They need to know that what they are doing is not acceptable and that they're not in charge.
Right.
But at the same time, you're there, you know, pat, pat, kick, kick. It's a good way, you know. So I mean, but I like that because it's really how it is. Like they know it's not acceptable, but at the same time, you're helping them.
Yeah. Reward and consequence is just a good rule of thumb. You know that there are rewards for doing it right, and there's consequences for not doing.
Exactly. Well, I think do you want to say anything else?
No.
Yeah, so all right, well, I want to thank you so much, and make sure you like and subscribe and hit that bell. Thank you. Bye.
Bye now.